Hi, this is Scott Welch, Muscle Insider Magazine. We're here with Raza Bashir, Vice President of Innovation and Scientific Affairs. How are you doing today, Raza?
I'm doing great, thanks. How about you?
Good. What's going on in Muscletech world? What's happening these days?
Oh, we're always keeping busy. We're always thinking about, what's the next big innovation? What's the next, science and technology that we can kind of bring to market? And what I can tell you is we're not going to disappoint. There's a lot coming out in the very near future.
Okay, now you guys are obviously one of the leaders in whey protein. I mean, Nitrotech has been there since the launch in January 2000. But let me just start off by just telling consumers, like, what exactly is whey protein?
Sure. So whey proteins, it's a type of milk protein. So it is derived from milk protein. There's two proteins found within milk, whey and casein. Casein makes up 80% of that, and the 20% is whey. What happens is through the process for making cheese, the curds are separated, which contain the casein, and the leftover liquid is the whey protein, which then goes through a bunch of other different processes, including spray drying to concentrate it and filter it. And that leaves you with, your whey protein concentrate or isolate, which then gets to be used in products, foods, powders, supplements.
Okay, now in terms of the whey protein isolate and whey protein concentrate, we always see that debate. I mean, what is better? I mean, what is really the difference between whey protein concentrate and whey protein isolate?
Yeah, so really what you're talking about is the degree of concentration of the protein. So whey protein concentrate, for the most part, is the most widely used and popular. It's an excellent protein source. Typically ranges from 70 to 80%. You can find lower sources, but typically that's not going to be usually in a really high quality lean protein supplements. But whey protein isolate essentially has gone through additional steps and additional filtration just to remove some more of the fat and lactose that we be within it. So you're getting a little more concentrated source of protein and amino acids per serving. But both excellent protein sources.
Now, in terms of some labels, I mean, some of the smaller companies I've seen, some of the shady ones around the world, I see some companies claiming it's like 100% protein, zero fat, zero carbs. Is that even possible?
No, not really. I mean, there is, especially if it's flavored. So typically you've got your starting protein, but there's always going to be a little bit of, minerals, fat, a little bit of moisture. So 100 really isn't possible. And then if you are going to add any type of flavors or sweeteners, again, those are things that are also going to, enhance the serving size. So per serving, it's really not something that you would be able to achieve.
Now, I've seen with Nitrotech, when it originally launched it, I mean, I don't want to date myself, but it had the 97% whey protein isolate. I mean, that just must be like as good as it gets, because obviously I've seen that whey protein isolate in stuff like obviously Nitrotech here.
Yeah.
And, I mean, is that the most premium that you can sort of get your hands on?
Yeah, essentially the highest percentage of protein you can get is that 97, 98. And usually what it's doing, it's going through a slightly different process of ion exchange, which is selectively binding proteins. Think of it sort of as a magnet, separating the protein, and allows you to get the highest concentration without any of the excess fat and lactose.
Okay. Now, obviously, for those of you who haven't seen our previous video where we interviewed you about plant protein, how much protein would you say an athlete should have in a given day?
Yeah, so the top recommendation that I would provide is, and you'll see a range in the literature from 1.4 grams per kilo all the way up to 2 grams per kilo, and then in some cases up to 2.3. And I think 2.3 is sort of the sweet spot. And the easiest way to remember that is 1 gram of protein per kilo body weight. That is ideal. Another thing to think of too is when you're having meals, somewhere between 30 to 40 grams, about 4 times a day. That's another way to kind of keep an eye on how much protein you're getting.
Okay, now speaking of meal timing, I mean, whey is considered to be a fast digesting protein. So what would you recommend are the most ideal times to consume something like Nitrotech?
Yeah, so the ideal time, and that's a really good point. So whey protein is is something that's extremely fast absorbing, and is fast as 20 minutes. And it also has the highest natural clearing amount of your essential amino acids and branched chain amino acids. So the ideal time to take something like our Nitrotech is around your workouts. What I'd say, there's a lot of flexibility, but around your workouts, a lot of people have that routine. They want to take something post-workout. That is amazing. What happens is when you're working out, your body's always in a cycle of balancing protein building, anabolic processes, and protein breakdown, the catabolic processes. And when you exercise, you are enhancing both, but you're usually enhancing protein synthesis, protein building to a greater extent. And what the research shows is by taking a high quality protein source, similar to our Nitrotech and containing whey protein, elevates that even further. So you're really getting into that positive nitrogen balance, greater ability to increase protein building. So around your workouts, ideal. And, when you're elevating protein synthesis, usually after workout for 24 to 48 hours, I always tell people, optimal is essential. You want to make use of every minute of that time. If you're trying to get in the best shape, the best physique, be stronger, be faster. And how you do that is taking it right away. And you could start even before your workouts. Not everybody likes to do that, just in case it might be kind of heavy. So you do have options. You could look at essential amino acids. You could also look at different types of fortified proteins that might be more lightly flavored, sort of the lower pH fruit flavors, for example. That's one opportunity, but definitely around your workouts, and even after a fast, or like first thing when you wake up in the morning is always a great time as well.
Now, one of the things I see on the market is companies, especially I see this a lot in Europe, but companies will just provide like the lowest cost way possible. They'll shop, and consumers sometimes just buy the cheapest protein that they can find. But is that not the wrong advice for athletes? Because isn't that going to have higher levels of lactose, higher levels of fat, just to get that cost down?
Yeah, that's, definitely. It's really important to look at quality. Look at the way the product's labeled, right? Look at the whey protein sources. Look at the serving size. So often if they are using a lower quality whey, a lot of fillers, the serving size might be really large versus the amount of protein. That's one way to look at it. So definitely that's a really good point. Look for something that has the science behind it, something like our similar to our Nitrotech, where there's clinical studies behind it. Very lean on fat, carbs, higher on the protein. And then the other thing is taste, right? One of the most important things is finding something that tastes really good. So, some of the organizations, might not put the level of detail. I'm really proud. We have such a robust and industry leading process that we have here, that the formula can't just be good on paper. We need to make sure it's got that overall craftsmanship and taste, mouthfeel before we release it to market.
I really have found when I was in high school using protein powders, and you had to plug the nose and do the Rocky Belt and just down it. But I've really seen with all of the Muscletech products, from Celltech to Nitrotech to Shatter, flavor just seems to be a real focus for Muscletech as a company. And tell me a little bit about that. You guys have in-house taste testing. I've seen computer screens myself when I got a tour of your facility, where you can have people actually surveying different flavors, different samples, and then using a computer screen to select which one they liked, and sort of blinded from the person behind the screen that's giving you the samples and maybe the people beside you. But I have never seen in-house flavor taste testing done this way from any supplement company.
Yeah, no, thanks for that and elaborating on that and shining a light on it. We're really proud of it. We really do have an industry leading process, and we're really fortunate to have the expertise in-house internally. So we've got multiple labs. When we get samples, we do bring it here for sensory evaluation. So we can't rely on just one person or one palate. Our goal is to have blinded taste tests in our sensory room. So our R&D team is handing out these samples in a blinded fashion. And to your point, it's all electronic. So we've actually got an app now. So there's an app where people can go on their phone, select, provide all their feedback, and it's instantaneous. We get that feedback right away And then we look at that overall body of research and then decide, okay, well, what do we need to do for the next round? Did we really meet the hurdles that we were expecting? Did we beat the benchmark? Otherwise, we go back to the drawing board. How do we need to impact everything from, the mouthfeel to the sweetness intensity to the aroma? All that goes into play. And we've definitely come a long way. I think flavors really, really evolved. And there's some amazing tasting proteins that we've been able to launch over the years.
Now, we hear the term thrown around with stability testing, and a lot of the people in the industry, from retailers to distributors, they just assume that when they get a company's product, that is going to be, fresh by the time the consumer buys it, by the expiry date. But you folks have shown me an accelerator is like a fridge, these giant fridges that accelerate the product life of the product. So you can sort of see what will this product be like in 3 months and 9 months. And take me, I don't want you to reveal any confidential things about how you go about putting quality products out there, but I just was so blown away by that, because I think retailers that get behind a brand, they assume that their customer is going to be getting something that by the time the expiry is there, it's not clumping up or it's not, changing the flavor of what they originally had. But you folks are testing these formulas before they're signed off on to make sure that when they do pass that 3 month, 6 month, 9 month mark, this is what the consumer will experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we've been trusted for more than 25 years because we deliver on quality. And again, that's one of the things that we have internally. We have the experts, the quality experts in our building. We have 2 ways in which we assess our product. We've got a room that's ambient temperature, where we're watching the product for the entire duration of its shelf life to make sure that it is in fact hitting label claim for the entire shelf life and expiry that we have on there. And then the room, the big chambers that you're referring to, are accelerated chamber, where we're essentially putting products through a stress test to understand how it performs. So it's actually held at 40 degrees Celsius, which would be about 104 Fahrenheit, and then 75% relative humidity. So really extreme conditions, and allows us to get understanding, to experiment and understand what happens when certain ingredients are combined. Is there some type of matrix interference? Are they going to test out and meet the label claim? And at the same time, a lot of ingredients, particularly used in certain categories, can also be hygroscopic. What's happening? We want to prevent clumping, product hardening, anything that can deteriorate, efficacy, but also the consumer and flavor experience.
And that's some of the things that I don't think some of the people, the consumer and some of the newer companies realize, is that it's how does the whole formula interact with one another. So for example, with the Elite, which obviously your team came up with this Nitrotech Elite, this isn't just whey protein isolate. There's things in here like 3 grams of creatine monohydrate. You've got the MyHMB, which is the calcium HMB. I think it's at 1.5 grams. And then tart cherry, digestive enzymes. So but you've also looked at the totality as how does this all work together to maximize protein synthesis, to maximize muscle hypertrophy. There's a mouthful for you. But it's just the totality of the formula, not just this, let's put this and this and this because some other company has it. But you folks have taken that next step. Take me through a bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially, with that product there, we wanted to create the most effective protein for enhancing muscle strength, overall recovery, based on the most leading science and ingredients with the best research. So what we use is something that, we pioneered the combination of whey protein plus creatine, going back to that landmark Nitrotech study, which showed that it was more effective than just taking whey protein alone, for example. And then, that the MyHMB, what's interesting about that is how complementary it can be in terms of helping with preventing protein breakdown. So, the goal is, I was talking about that we're all consistently in that cycle of balancing, your protein building versus protein breakdown. It can really help with that. And then the combination of the tart cherry, which is really concentrated in polyphenols, these antioxidant compounds, which is a great body of research for reducing muscle soreness, anti-catabolic properties, overall recovery. So you've got all the performance enhancing compounds in addition to the the highest quality whey protein isolate source to provide all the essential amino acids you need, which are the building blocks for your muscle. So you're getting everything you need to feed your muscle, help recover, right? Because as you're training, essentially what's happening, you are breaking down your muscles and you need those amino acids to help rebuild them. So we have that in there. And then we also, the enzyme complex is really critical. So it's a it's a clinically studied form of enzyme complex been shown to enhance that absorption of that protein. So make sure that, not only you're absorbing fast, but you're getting the most of it and it's bioavailable.
And that's where I think a lot of consumers don't realize that you can consume the protein, but it's all about how do you digest the amino acids that are inside the protein and utilize more of those amino acids into muscle to help build muscle. And these are little extra things that go beyond just a traditional way. Now, one of the other things I notice, obviously, is the different types of Nitrotech that are here. I mean, Nitrotech Ripped, you have obviously for supporting fat loss, and sort of an all-in-one 100% whey gold with Nitrotech. I believe there was a Nitrotech Power as well. But what sort of, I mean, how many different proteins are there under Nitrotech? I mean, it seems like there's so many different things depending on your needs, whether you want the most elite of the elite with this, or you want something to obviously get you lean for getting ripped and all that good stuff.
Right. So we've got a few. Always try to keep up, but we're always busy. Anytime we have some type of new science or new ingredient, and when we hear how consumers are utilizing protein, we're typically trying to have a different offering. So we do have our whey gold that you mentioned, and then as well as our core Nitrotech, which has the addition of creatine, for the additional muscle building benefits, and then our Nitrotech Elite, which is really the best protein out there and the most powerful in terms of overall recovery. We have our ripped formulation to help people. It's got two human clinical studies behind it on the weight loss component that supports the overall lean body composition. So that would be part of the Nitrotech family. And then throughout the years, we've also we've got a grass fed, we've got a clear form, a fruit flavored protein as well. And then you go a naturally flavored protein as well, naturally flavored and sweetened. So quite a few.
Your series. Now, you talked about research, and obviously Muscletech has funded more research on creatine than any other company in the world, and obviously are at the forefront of research by investing in the University of Toronto with a human performance lab that's there. And there's always research, but why? I mean, why does Muscletech invest in research? Because you see a lot of companies, they use scientific sounding this and scientifically sounding that, but why does Muscletech invest in research?
That's really important to us. Again, we want our customers, they have trusted us for more than 25 years and, want our consumers to continuously feel that they can trust us, knowing that, we're going to deliver on efficacy, on safety, on overall quality, ingredients that are science-backed, that have the level of purity, that are fully disclosed. All those things are really important to us. In order to do that, we also have to be, advancing the science, assessing our products. And, we love evolving. So as we continue to make supplements, we're always thinking about how could we make better products? How could we have something that could be more advanced, that could solve another pain point for athletes, but ultimately enhance performance and what's evidence-based. So that's really critical to us. I mean, we really are a research-led, and we're always thinking about science first, and that's in our DNA.
Now, hopefully I don't offend some of the Muscle Insider consumers out there, but I notice that sometimes you open your whey protein and you look at it, and it's not like busting. I mean, this is really, really, really high, but it's not right to the top where it's, like I could blow on the top of it here. But what happens in the manufacturing of protein powder as to why do they have that little lip that they leave a gap that's here? So just for people to understand sort of how that works.
Sure, and that's a good question. I mean, even as a consumer, I know people I think it's a reasonable question to ask. And unless you've, really been in a manufacturing facility and understood some of the the variation that you can have in density of ingredients, it is a little difficult to understand. And our manufacturers, what they have is they have an automated filling system. So they're using this auger feed that is essentially dropping protein into the vessel, into these bottles. And as it's doing that, when you're working with ingredients like protein and creatine, they're very fluffy as you're filling. So when we look at the bulk density, and they don't settle right away. It can often be days before it actually settles and falls down. So when you're filling it, it's actually higher. And it's really important that that powder doesn't impact the integrity of the seal. So there has to be some functional headspace that's needed there. You also need room to add the scoop and some of the other things. So it's all done for the right reasons. And often what can happen is, depending on the seasonality of the proteins, the bulk density, they may settle. There will be some settling and they may settle low, but it's typically for manufacturing reasons for the most part. But high quality protein suppliers and manufacturers and companies ourselves, it's all done to spec though. So the weight, the amount of servings would always be accurate.
One of the recommendations I always have to consumers is to take their protein and just agitate it before they use it,
Right.
Mix uniform, because each of them, as you mentioned, each ingredient has different densities in it. And based on that, you're going to want to have an even distribution of it. But you just got to watch when you take that lid off that it doesn't puff up in your face.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Listen, let's go forward now. One of the questions I really want to ask you is, when it comes to the different countries, I mean, Muscletech products are in well over 100 countries. They've been around and established over 25 years. What are some of the most unique flavors you've seen kind of made for specific markets? Because not everybody, I mean, in North America, we always look at the chocolates and the vanillas and some of the more traditional flavors. But since you've been with the company, what has your team created in terms of some unique flavors over the years?
That's a good question. I'm going back down memory lane here, trying to think about what we've done. We have done, and it really has been a large number of samples and products that we've done over the years. A couple that stand out. We did a churros flavor, which was really interesting. A dulce de leche, which was really good as well. Those two are up there as probably some of the more unique. The churros was probably one of my favorite. That was pretty. That was definitely really exciting. And then just more recently, we are launching a taro flavor as well for those milk tea fans. So there's quite a few that we've done.
Amazing. Now, in terms of another question, I mean, in China, there's a huge market, and Muscletech is one of the leading brands in China. What are the products, what are the differences there that you've noticed that consumers sort of really gravitate to with sports nutrition products?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we noticed, so similar to here, they're definitely looking to get their hands on protein, creatine, the gainers. Gainers are also popular. The one thing we definitely noticed, though, was the difference in the palate in terms of the sweetness intensity. So our North American palate, we definitely like our products sweet. And that was something that even if we were shipping, for example, some of our core proteins like our Nitrotech and thing, we did have to tone down the sweetness intensity for them. So that was probably one of the most interesting. But similarly, gainers and proteins are popular for sure.
Okay, now in terms of a movement, I mean, we've all seen the grass-fed beef and everything else. What is we've seen grass-fed whey concentrate, grass-fed whey isolate. What are the benefits of having a grass-fed whey as a whole? Like, why would somebody want that?
I think, it really comes down to, functionality. Essentially, they're very similar, right? I mean, you are getting whey protein. It's more about the farm. They are, you're talking about organic farms and organic feeds and how they're used. So that's probably the biggest difference. They can often be free of the soy allergen as well. But overall, in terms of how they perform, functionality, in terms of performance, very similar. So I think it comes down to a little bit more of the values. And often you can also find that some of those products may also be naturally flavored and sweetened as well.
Yeah. No, because that's one of the things. I mean, Dave Palumbo is a good friend of mine, and obviously he is a really, really smart nutritionist. And he
Yeah.
talked about the benefits of grass-fed whey, and obviously being the oftentimes the fats that are inside that are beneficial
Right.
to you. And I just sort of never understood why some companies would sell a grass-fed whey protein isolate, which is almost no fats, when it's the fats part of whey that's grass fed that you're sort of looking to increase in your diet if that's your chosen method that you want to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you know, the one thing that you reminded me of too is they are also, you know, fairly concentrated in one of the proteins, beta lactalbumin. So that, you know, has some immune benefits. So there could be something there relative to that as well.
Okay. Now, what is, I mean, you mentioned some research, obviously, that was on original Nitrotech formula, but what is some of the other research that has been exciting for you, Muscletech is funded in the protein area?
Yeah, so I mean, we've funded so much research over the years. More recently, what we did partner with the University of Toronto at the Muscletech Metabolism and Sports Science Lab, and what we studied there was a combination whey isolates and whey peptides, and showed that in a really practical study too, in free living subjects, that we're able to enhance recovery over 24 hours, as well as overall peak power and strength. So that was one of the more recent. So again, just continue to evolve some of the understanding and the design and sort of real world results in a clinical setting. And right now, currently, we've actually got a study underway studying plant protein, our newest plant protein versus other plant protein sources, as well as whey protein. So more to come very soon.
I'm excited. Listen, thank you so much for taking some time with us, Raza. For fans out there, check out Muscletech products at muscletech.com.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.